Hi, it's Gina DePrima, and you're listening to Divorce with Heart. We merge heart wisdom and legal expertise to guide you along your divorce and co-parenting journey. Hey, hello. How's everybody doing today? It's a beautiful Monday here. It's Buffalo, New York, and the sun is finally coming out, so I'm feeling pretty good, but you might hear me clearing my throat. You know, it's this allergy thing, so I apologize now. See, there we go. Today is episode 3, and we are going to talk all about blame today. Blame and how blame often can be the culprit in what stands between you and your future happiness in a relationship. And it's funny because just as I was getting ready for today's program, I found myself in my own little cycle of blame and being taken from blame into a little bit of frustration and that kind of feeling that happens. And I thought, well, isn't this funny? I'm ready to talk about blame, and here I am having my little experience. And it wasn't anything real big, but, you know, I sat down here to get ready for my program today, and I'm just trying to get my headphones set, and they're all tangled up in a crazy, disastrous mess. So where did my head go? Blame, pointing the finger at my kids, and what did they do? And So I just wanted to start, I guess, with a little bit of that diversion here, that although we're talking today about blame in some really like bigger, heavier sense of the word, blame is something that carries different weights, right? But no matter the subject or how this creature of blame is creeping into your life, it's still, regardless, going to act like a barrier to your happiness. You know, for me this morning, it was taking me from more of this kind of chilled, higher vibe kind of state, ready to go, into this state of stress and frustration. For you, in dealing with matters of heartache and personal relationships, I'm sure that it's more like the weight of this great big boulder that you're carrying around. And that's kind of what we're really going to talk about here today. I picture blame kind of like this steel wall. All right. It's this steel wall, and it's just made of, you know, the strongest material on earth, like kryptonite, I guess. It's like kryptonic blame. All right. And this is what can just stand in your way and block you from having the experiences that you really, really, truly want and desire in your life. And it's this place where you want to be, right? Which, if you're going through a divorce or a real hard breakup, it's this place, I think, where your heart goes, where you want to be, where you want, you know, to look around at your children and your family, and you want to see smiles on their faces, right? I mean, that's the other side of, I don't want to call it a rainbow because it's not that fun, but I guess it's the other side of the bridge. You know, you're on one side now, and it feels pretty tough, and you want to get to that other side where everybody is happy. They're smiling. Your children are feeling safe and secure. And, you know, they're feeling that it's really not just okay, right? But just amazing and perfect that they can love both mommy and daddy equally, that they can go from house to house without ever having any feelings of guilt or shame or betrayal. And, you know, they can just be happy little kids with big smiles on their faces. You're smiling, your ex-husband, your ex-wife may be smiling. And even though you know there's pain there, it's this place where everybody has seemed to have, I guess, elevated from that mucky place where they were, and now you're getting along much better. It's a place of harmony. And I think that's really the goal and where a lot of people would like to see themselves on the other side of divorce and breakup. But what happens when blame gets in the way, it's this heavy, heavy barrier that keeps you from getting there, right? Like this big rock in your path, this big wall in front of you. You can't quite get to the other side, if you can picture it. And you can't get there because, well, in part, you're too busy pointing the finger, and that's the blame. And you could be pointing that finger at yourself. You could be having a lot of self-blame, looking at yourself and criticizing yourself at every turn, and all of the things that you did that you're not proud of, all of the things that you may have said, all of the things that you didn't say that maybe you wished you had said. The venom that flies in the heat of an argument. So you might be pointing the finger at yourself, and that could be standing in your way of getting to the other side. And if you're not pointing your finger at yourself, or maybe even if you are, you got more than one finger, so you're still pointing the finger at the other person, right? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about pointing the finger at your spouse, pointing your finger at your husband and noticing and picking up on all of the things that he did, or to your wife and all of the things that she did, right? So that's how blame creeps in. And I think the first step, or a practice point at least, in how do we get rid of this? How can you obliterate it from your life? Is to first, I really want you to notice what you're doing and just being here today. And just being here today, tuning in and listening to this, or just even joining the Facebook group, Divorce with Heart, or reading the Conscious Uncoupling book, or, maybe you're working with a divorce coach or a parenting coordinator. Take a look at the steps you're doing, because being here today, participating in groups like that, shows that you have great courage to take this experience that you're going through, this heartache and this pain, and you're willing to transform and heal through that, and to do it in a way that may not necessarily be conventional, that is going to at times invoke criticism or ridicule from the people that you may even be closest to, your best friend, your mother, your father, because they're not going to understand your new approach and perspective. So first, I want you to really appreciate yourself. Appreciate yourself for having the courage to be here. Don't take yourself for granted that you're at least even just here, willing to take this step and willing to get down and dirty in your life and, take a magnifying glass to it to see how blame might be the culprit, might be something that's standing in your way from achieving what you really want on the other side of the bridge, right? And the other thing, when you're going through this process of divorce and this process of growth and transition, you need to have patience with yourself. So acknowledge your courage, be grateful for who you are, be gentle with yourself because you're not going to be perfect, and have patience, because blame is something that you really need to attack on a regular basis, I think. When you get to like a core root or the core seed of blame, you'll notice that a lot of other things might fall to the wayside. But all of those other little things, if you can picture it like a tree and the branches, it's those little branches that still get in the way. And what I mean is once you get better at uncovering and getting rid of the big blames in your life, who do you really blame for the worst things, the heaviest blame, the heaviest pain, then the little things will be much easier to let go of. Like, for example, what I related just a little bit ago, me getting upset with my kids and my son and starting to cycle through this thing of blame and how they were at fault for messing up my equipment, right? Oh, and even before that, you might have heard advertisements for this show that I wasn't expected to be here live today because I was really working hard at settling a case and not having a trial. And I could have been all off in my blame spiral. And I'm not going to lie, I went there for a minute, like I said. But I didn't stay there. And the reason why I didn't stay there and why it was so much easier for me to kind of just move through it and flow through it and not let it really affect me too deeply, or it's going to ruin my day and become kind of a underlying theme of frustration or anger that, I'm going to carry with me through the day. The reason why I didn't get there is because of some of the work I've done in dealing with the heavier blames, the more serious blames. And those are the blames that come when your heart is broken, when you're going through a breakup, or, in my case, I'm not divorced, but I am the child of a divorce, a very, 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 very nasty divorce. And I'm the oldest of 3 kids that went through it. So I've had and I've carried my fair share of blame. And I've had to do the work, and I've had to go in and look at that so that I could try and improve my relationships with the people that I was most affected by in that situation. So you could see this isn't an easy process. This is why you have to acknowledge yourself and have courage. And as you go through it, I want you to note your successes. Like for me, in this little example, it would be exactly what I just said. Wow, I did pretty good today. I didn't let myself get too carried away in this cycle. So that's pretty good. So that's what I mean when noticing your successes. So you can see that part of my philosophy here is that to get to a better life where you are really helping your children and building a stronger family, you have to really take on this different mindset. You have to sort of heal your heart, reshape your heart. And a huge piece to that is being able to drop the blame, right? And I'm going to walk you through, I think, some ways that I've tackled this, and hopefully it will resonate with you as well. You need to take the time to get quiet with yourself. And when I say take the time to get quiet with yourself, I'm really not talking about meditation, where you're absolutely clearing your mind. If you can tell in listening to me, that's not something that I can do. I've got way too many thoughts, way too many feelings. Things are just, going around. I can slow them down. I can focus. I can learn. I can feel, right? But completely clearing my head, that's not something I've been able to achieve. And I think that's okay. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that probably feel like that. Nonetheless, still take the time to get quiet. Quiet meaning you can shut the door, your kids aren't around, you don't have to do anything other than sit down with yourself. Sit down with yourself and, get to know yourself in a way. Kind of having this conversation with your true essence, taking the time to sit down and reflect on some of your experiences. Because if you don't ever take the time to slow down and smell the roses, well, then you miss it all, right? I think we can all appreciate that on some level. So take the time to do it. Have an intention in mind. You know that you're going to take this time. You're going to dive in. You're going to be brave because you need a lot of courage to do this. And you are wanting to see and learn what you haven't been able to see or learn yet. Your intention is to change how you feel internally about something. And you know that in order to do that, you're going to have to go back and process the quote unquote something, right, a little differently. So if you're going through a divorce, let's say, take your husband, call him to mind, focus on him, All right. And then move that focus and awareness to you and your feelings and your body. And stuff's going to start to come up. You're going to start to get memories. Things are going to play out in your mind. Stories, they're going to come forward. The feelings that you have. And I'm sure your first inclination is going to kind of be clench up, resist, hold up that shield of blame. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to feel that stuff. I think the flip side of blame is that spot inside where we feel vulnerable, maybe shame. And nobody likes to really feel that. So the best way out, we think, is to shield ourselves from it with blame. But unfortunately, the best way out really is to work through it, not shield. So these things are going to come up, memories, scenes, events that have happened. And don't let yourself hide from yourself, if that makes sense. Because if you fall into the trap of just spiraling into the blame thought, then you're not going to be able to grow or make any changes, because that's a place where you're powerless. Because if you're looking at somebody else and you're pointing the finger and you're saying, well, it's his fault. He hurt me so much. He cheated on me. I gave him a chance. He cheated on me again. I gave him another chance. He cheated on me again. How could he have broken my heart like this? I've never felt such pain and betrayal, and I trusted him. And how could he do this? If you keep your head and your heart there and pointing the finger, then there's nothing that you yourself can do to prevent yourself from feeling that crummy way, right? And there's nothing you can do then to affect change, positive change in your relationship with that person, or maybe with the next person. You're more likely to keep on repeating this pattern if you don't look at yourself and the things that you can change. Because, of course, you can't change the other person. There's nothing you could have done to stop that person, your husband, from going out and cheating on you. But there's things that you can do so that you're not finding yourself in that same situation again. So that's why you need to look at yourself as these moments and things come up. All right. So it's not, you can get in there first and go through, because sometimes it's easiest to see it when you really go through and you list it and you do actually point the finger first. List all of the things that, all your husband's flaws, all of his faults, all of the things that your wife didn't do right, all of the ways that she disappointed you or let you down, or, all of the ways that your husband didn't care for you and the ways that you thought you should have been cared for. And once you see that, then you can really start to say, what else can I see here? What else can I see? How can I see this situation differently? Is there something that I'm missing here? And when you do that, when you stop and you can ask yourself, what's missing? How can I look at this differently? Look at yourself first, okay? Because I think it's easiest maybe not to blame ourselves, because we definitely don't like doing that as people in human nature. So look to yourself first and consider this, all right? If I reacted in the way that I did, and everything that I did, I did it based on what I knew at the time, the resources I had available to me at the time, the experiences I had in my life at the time, the knowledge I had at the time. And if you could say that about yourself, couldn't you say that and use that as a gateway then to forgive yourself and say, look, I did the best I could. My response was the result of everything I knew at the time and where I was at that place in time. And had I been then the person that I am now and learned and have had the opportunity to grow through it, maybe I would have acted different. But that all happened to bring me where I am today. And I think when you look at it like that, you can find compassion and you can find forgiveness. And from there, shift it then to the other person. Shift it to the other person and give them the same benefit of the doubt. Okay, give them the benefit of the doubt. Say to them, okay, now look, if I was this person, look at it from their perspective, their life experience, what you know of it. And I'm sure you have a lot of clues, right? I'm sure you know how your spouse was raised and what kind of family your wife was from or your husband was from. So you have a lot to work with here. So put yourself in their shoes and say, well, if I were them, isn't it possible to, just by the fact that we're all humans and it's human nature, that, you know what, they also, or they too, were not necessarily maybe intentionally trying to hurt me. They weren't intentionally trying to do everything wrong and not meet my expectations or to not care for me the way that I wanted to be cared for. But maybe they were also acting the best that they could with what they knew at the time and their experiences that they had at that moment in time. Okay. And I know that's a leap, and that can be a huge leap, and that can be real difficult to do. I've done it. And I've done it. I'll tell you, I've done it when I've had to look back at my relationship with my mother. I will tell you, I have carried around this big ass boulder of blame, we'll say, for years and years and years. And a lot of it is related to the divorce, and it is related to her behavior during the divorce, her behavior after the divorce, things that have happened there, you know, and it's this big boulder that has caused me this level of anger and frustration. And I mean, levels of this stuff that you can't make up and you don't duplicate with other people, right? And I think that's because we feel the strongest when we're talking about relationships, intimate, serious family relationships. So when I went in, I got and did this reflection, you know, I would be just flooded with tons of stories and examples and things that happened and all of the letdown, you know, that I experienced. And trust me, it's super easy to point the finger, right? But I had to look at it with compassion. I had to look at it from a different place. I have to be very gentle with myself. And I had to do these things because I know that if I don't do these things, then I don't move forward from this trap. All right. And this is something that I have to do on a regular daily basis because this relationship, let me tell you, is still not a good relationship, but I'm growing and I'm working on it and I'm healing just as I'm trying to encourage and inspire all of you to do, because I really believe that we really, truly are all in this together. So when you look at it for yourself in your relationship with your spouse, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to see the stories unfold, see it in your mind's eye, so to speak, you know, on that screen of the memories that play. I want you to really, really, really get into the story. I want you to try to ask for some guidance in how you could see it differently. Have some compassion on yourself, knowing that you did the best you could in the moment. And then shift that to the person who's the target of your blame. All right. And as you do this, I want you to open your heart and really just think of the possibility that an alternate outcome, right, is possible. And then in fact, it really was possible this whole time, because all we're doing is we're kind of going back in time in our minds, in our hearts, and we're sort of reliving an experience by being willing to take on a different perspective, a newer perspective, one that's more positive. It's like just putting a new dress on the situation in a way. But if you do it in a way that you are really taking the feelings into your heart and letting it kind of sink in to your body and become part of who you are, then you will also be able to then show up differently in your life. Because there's a possibility that this sort of alternate outcome, right, that you're sort of creating, you might feel like you're making it up in your mind, that's reality and you just don't know it anyways. You don't know it because you didn't see it that way. You didn't see it that way because that wasn't your perspective. That wasn't your angle that you were taking on it. But now you are. So who's to say that that can't be your new reality? Who's to say? We don't know. You only know what you've seen. You only know what you've acted on. Right? So consider that the other person, again, the target of your pain, that they have the same truth that you have, that we're all human, that we all make mistakes, that they did the best that they could at that moment of time with everything that they had, just as you did. And see if you don't start to feel better when you bring some compassion into your life and some consideration and awareness of, really just those two simple truths there, that we are human and we all do the best we can with what we have from where we are in our life's experiences up to that point. So you want to build a better feeling around it, because if you don't, it will seep in every area of your life. So you need to go back and fill the crack, right? Fill the crack in your heart, smooth it over, and feel better about it. And in doing that, you'll be able to stop blaming yourself. You will be able to stop blaming your husband, stop blaming your wife. Right? You will be able to just see the situation for what it is. An experience in time, a drop in the water, okay? Something that happened that you are now growing from. And you will be able to really just drop that boulder of blame, drop the weight, drop the hostility and all of the anger and frustration that, goes along with blame. And instead, you'll walk around with forgiveness in your heart, compassion. You'll be brave, you'll have wisdom, and you'll be creating better experiences for yourself when you do this. Now, as you can imagine, I'm not talking that you can just go in and do this once, right? It doesn't work like that. If it worked like that, we'd all just have, we'd recover from a heartbreak in a second. It just doesn't work like that. And we all know it. But I think what we forget is the actual amount of practice it takes to affect change. It takes a lot of practice. This is something you've got to do every day. This is something that you need to not just increase your awareness of where your blame comes from and how it's impacting your life, but you need to implement it by actively choosing different emotions and actively choosing a different perspective. And what I mean is, now, for example, I was talking about my mother earlier. If there's something of an event to be had or something going on, I have to prepare myself at times, mentally and emotionally. I've got to bring myself out of the muck, out of the blame, throw on different glasses to be there. And when I do, boy, do I see the benefit. It's incredible. It's incredible because we all feed off of each other and we all feed off of each other's emotions. So when I flow out, a good emotion and some good energy, that's what I get back. And I'll tell you, in the times that, because we're human, I don't do that, you can guess what I get back. More trouble, right? More trouble, more drama, more hurt feelings, more pain. And so you see, for you in your life, in your relationships, in your family, your divorce, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So if you want to be able to really successfully co-parent afterwards, I think you can see how holding on to the blame and carrying that with you is going to have a negative impact right? And I think you can see then how it can be so important to go back. You've got to drop the blame and the hurt and try to rewrite the experience. Look at it from a higher place and taking a different perspective with you. So I think what we're going to do now is take a quick little break. And we are live today, even though I know we weren't necessarily expecting that, but we are. So call in, let's chat. It doesn't necessarily have to be about blame or how that's impacted you, but give us a call. Let me know what's on your mind. How can I help you experience a better divorce? Let's talk about it. Be right back in a few. Hey there, it's Gina. If you like what you hear, did you know that you can get even deeper and closer to your heart's wisdom and receive personal one-on-one guidance by working with me virtually? If you're sick of drowning in frustration and overwhelm and ready to flow through your divorce and co-parenting challenges, then go to my website and book a call with me. That's deprima.com, DEPRIMA law.com. Or you can find me on Facebook at Deprima Law. Talk to you soon. Some of you have questions about your partnership, marriage, or co-parenting situation. I'm here for you. Give me a call in today's live episode by dialing the U.S. number 1-760-456-7277. That's 1-760-456-7277. Talk to you soon. Hello. All right. We're back. Looks like we so far don't have any calls, but like I said, we are live today, even though it was a little bit unexpected. So give us a call if you want to chat, or you could also message me on Facebook at Divorce with Heart. That's the group. And today we are talking about blame. That's what we've been talking about. Started off here talking about how blame really acts sort of like this barrier to your future happiness. And I hope it makes sense as to why I say that and why I say look at yourself. And the thing that I really want to make sure that we understand and we draw the distinction on is that when I say looking at yourself, I certainly, definitely do not mean in the manner of creating more blame. What I'm really referring to more of is just self-responsibility. Just looking at yourself and just seeing how maybe you have contributed to your exact life experience, rather than just looking at somebody else and blaming somebody else, because when you just blame the other person, there's nothing that you can do about it, right? You can't. You can only affect yourself. So I'm really just talking about self-responsibility here and looking at the thoughts that you have, the feelings that you have, and the energy that you really just kind of bring with you into any situation. Because if you can come from a place where you are feeling more open-hearted, lighter-hearted, you're not angry, you're not frustrated, you're not stressed, you're more, if anything, you're more neutral and just more accepting and just going with the flow. If you can do that, then you're just going to feel amazing. You're just going to feel so much better. And it's it's really not even a surprise, or what should I say? It's not even really just a mental, emotional, psychological thing or reason why you're going to feel better, because there's a lot of studies that show also that having these negative emotions, and really these negative emotions oftentimes come from blame, right? Or at least they stick around. I should say this. They don't necessarily come from blame, but I think that they stick around more because blame is in the picture. Blame is in the house, because blame is what gives us permission to hide from ourselves, if that makes sense. Every time that we are choosing blame instead, it's kind of like putting up a shield, but we're only shielding ourselves from ourselves. We don't want to see what we did, right? So we're going to point the finger at everybody else, justify our own actions. And, it's just, we do it as humans. So when, I was saying physically, sorry, I almost lost my train of thought. So when you're having these sort of emotions that oftentimes will stick around even longer in your body and your heart and your mind and your soul because of blame allows them to linger, right? It actually physically affects your health. Physically, when you're carrying anger and stress and frustration, it affects you. And I don't have the studies in front of me, but I know that I've read countless studies. I think HeartMath is one place where they do a lot of research on this. But these kind of emotions, I think it affects your immune system. So then, of course, you're more prone to disease and illness. And, if we piggyback just that fact alone onto our discussion last week of some of the ways that children struggle when their parents, put them in the middle or have kind of a very nasty, unproductive divorce or a nasty, unproductive marriage, for that matter. We saw what happens. We saw that they're more prone to disease. We saw that they're more likely to have asthma. We saw that, I read the statistics where they don't have jobs that necessarily might be higher paying jobs. And they really, really suffer and their health suffers. So this is why it's so important to go back and look at ourselves and restructure ourselves from a place of, within, and then bring that out. Bring that out to the person that you are still engaged with as either your spouse while you're going through the divorce, or as your spouse and it's after the fact and now you're co-parenting. Because if you can do that, then you are paving the way for more harmony. You're paving the way for more collaboration, and a better experience. And it's the best thing that you can do for your kids. In fact, I'm really willing to bet, I don't know because she hasn't called in, but if you check out the Facebook group, the Divorce with Heart Facebook group, you'll see that Cassandra had posted there. Thank you, Cassandra, one of our first posts. And it's just so inspirational because she shared that after 2 years, I think she had said, of divorce, that her and her now ex-husband are actually friends. So not only did she make it to, the neutral zone, right? She actually made it all the way into the friend zone. And she says that her children are just, so much better for it. She's better for it. He's better for it. I mean, it's just amazing. So Cassandra, again, I want to thank you for sharing that. And hopefully we can have you on as a guest and you can share your experience. But I would be willing to go out onto a limb here, I guess, and think that probably you really had to drop a lot of the blame game, right? Of the blame game in order to get to that place. Because I doubt that it would have been possible for you to get there. And I don't know the circumstances of your relationship or marriage, but I doubt that it would have been possible for you to get there if you were still holding on to blame and pointing your finger at your husband, or maybe blaming him for the breakup of the marriage, which is also then, blaming him for that feeling of failure, for the feeling of being let down, for the heartache that you felt. I mean, I got to imagine that you had to go back and look at your experience differently in order to get to what you reported today, and that now you're even friends. And I just think that that is so incredible. And that's something also I want to bring onto this program here. And I hope that you'll help me to do that. I want to have a regular segment that's really going to be about spotlight stories, right? So the spotlight stories, the idea behind this is I want to give you a voice. I want to give you a voice. I want you to come on and share with the listeners, share with our group here, how you have transformed through your heartbreak, how you've transformed through your divorce, what you found most difficult, challenging, what did you do to overcome it, or maybe you don't feel ready to do that yet, but maybe you were working with an outstanding divorce or a divorce coach or somebody that you thought was really, really helpful, or there were things that you did that helped you. I want to hear from you because I want to be able to feature you on this program. So if you're interested in that, then please let me know through the Facebook group. You can message me. Hopefully Cassandra will join us. I know a few people did message earlier today, and I can't wait to hear from them. I know that Radiant Ronell, you had messaged, and I know you have quite a story to share. And that part of it I know. And if anybody's following the group, today Ronell was thinking perhaps that maybe she should have just stayed in the marriage, right? Maybe she should have just stayed in the marriage and suffered in silence. And I know a little bit about Ronell's story. And if you saw that, my response to her was definitely not. You can't doubt, how do I want to say this? You can't really doubt your outcomes, right? I mean, yes, you are still experiencing great challenges, no doubt. And for what it's worth, I know that that's going to continue. And Ronell, I think you've already said that you'd come on the show to talk about it, but just so our listeners know a little bit, Ronell has probably some of the best firsthand knowledge and experience in dealing with a Class A narcissist. And I know that that's a topic that really touches home for a lot of people. And let me tell you, Ronell's got that because her co-parent is absolutely a Class A narcissist. So she does not have such an easy, smooth road. And he's also very hostile, abusive person. Okay? And I don't want to say too much because, Ronell, I know you can share about your story. But, yeah, you're going to have challenges. You're going to be called upon even more, I think, to be the bigger person in a lot of ways and to dive in deep and to look at yourself and to try to make the best environment for your children and raise your children in the best way that you can. And I know that you do that. And I don't think that going back and thinking, well, maybe I should have just stayed and suffered in silence and my children might be better off. That's a mistake. And you've got to remember that today, no matter what you're modeling for your children is a whole lot of self-respect, dignity, right? Trustworthiness. You're building safety for your children. And those are traits that everybody could use, right? And we talked about it last week. A lot of times people are afraid to leave a relationship because of their kids and fearful of how this will impact their kids. And then sometimes you see, like in cases like Ronell's case, you might think, wow, God, this is so hard. The afterlife is so hard. It's not easier, right? Or it's so hard. Maybe I shouldn't have left in the first place. But remember, or ask yourself, if you stayed, what would you have been modeling for your children then? what would the lesson have been then for them? How would they have come out? How would it be different? And I got to say that children raised in hostile environments where the parents are fighting, especially if there's physical fighting and verbal altercations and things of that nature going on a regular basis, they don't do better, okay, than children of a divorce. And they probably do worse because now they're fearful of, when is the divorce going to happen? God, I can't even imagine how they feel when they see a parent being hit or abused by another parent, because that's like them taking the abuse themselves. I mean, it's just a whole nother layer and a whole nother set of emotions. So don't doubt yourself, all right? Don't doubt the decisions you've made that have brought you to where you are today. Again, you do what you can with what you have, right? So don't doubt yourself and don't blame yourself. But go back and be responsible and take some responsibility, because it's only from that place that you can begin to start making new choices and taking new action steps and meeting the right people or the right person and setting out and teaching the right boundaries, so to speak, right? So that you can teach people how you want to be treated. So blame, there you go. Don't blame yourself too much in whether you left or should have left, etc. And when you are going through the process, blame is something that can also cost you a lot of money, cost you a lot of aggravation, and hold you up from that place of agreement. Like I said, I wasn't even expected to be here today because we were expected to have a trial. Now, I mean, never mind how long we've been litigating, and I'm going to tell you it's been over a year, okay? But emotions run deep. You all know this. And sometimes it's that blame, and when you're holding on to the blame and blaming your spouse for all the things that they didn't do, all the reasons why you feel as terrible as you feel, it's that sort of breeds this idea of punishment, right? And when you want to punish the other person or your partner, then you're certainly not acting in ways that are going to forge a resolution or a settlement, right? You're always then acting from this mindset of, I'm going to win, he's going to lose, I'm going to punish him, I'm going to take him for all he's got. And that's where you really get into some of that nickel and diming type of behavior that interferes with negotiations. That's where you find yourself arguing for things that have a dollar value that's less, and even substantially, significantly less than what it's costing you to make the argument. Right? By the time you're done paying your lawyer, maybe the other lawyer, or maybe even after you have a trial, now you've paid for, who knows, maybe 20 hours or more of legal services, right? Over what? Over $3,000? I mean, this is the kind of thing that happens when spouses get stuck and they want to punish their partner. And that idea of punishment is directly related to blame. It's because, you're stuck blaming your partner for all the things that they did, all the wrong ways that they treated you, that it's their fault that the divorce is over, or that the marriage is over. It's their fault that you and your children are going to be kicked out of your home, and your children have to move, and that your children have to change school districts. And your heart is broken and you're sad, right? It's their fault. You know what I mean? That deep, heavy level, that feeling. That's where you start building up this idea of punishment. And I don't know that it's necessarily conscious. In fact, I'm going to go out here on a limb, I guess, again, and say that I don't even think it is conscious. I think it's just something that happens. It's a behavior that people fall into. And it's because they're blaming instead of looking to themselves. And that's why I really talk a lot about this idea of being a warrior of peace and the idea of being a warrior, because none of these things that I'm saying or suggesting are easy to do. I know that. I get it. And if they sound easy and if they sound simplistic, then keep on listening. Please keep on listening, because there's so many different layers and levels to what I'm saying. And I think, the more you listen, it might be something like that hits you differently depending on where you're at in your life, and you'll learn something different from it. So that's why I go back to that whole persona, I guess, of the warrior, because the warrior to me is somebody who has great courage and great strength. And that's what you need to do all of this. You need to have the courage and strength to stand up and just go through the process of divorce and rebuild your family in ways that are contrary to conventional wisdom, contrary to even what your lawyer might be urging you to do, right? And here's another good example of that. I'll give you my own personal life here as a lawyer. And I find that my goal is always to forge settlement first, because I know the damaging effects of trials, and I really act what I speak, right? But I'm going to tell you, there's times, and again, it happened to me very recently, where it was my client who had to be that warrior of peace. It wasn't me. It was my client. It was him. And he had to look at the situation, and he had to bear down the weapon, so to speak, and think, this isn't worth it. It's just not worth it. I know that the offers on the table aren't quote unquote fair. I know they're not fair. Whatever that word fair means, right? I mean, I think that's totally subjective, but I know that it's not maybe the best that I could do, but I'm willing to do it anyways. I'm willing to take that chance. I'm willing to take that sacrifice, or of that idea of giving up whatever I think I was entitled to monetarily, right? Because I think it's what's best. It's what's best overall, so that my family can grow from this, so that my family can, stop the bleeding, so to speak, so we can move on and grow up and begin to live again, right? And sometimes that's what you got to do. And in order to get there, you have to be willing to sit down and, sort through some of that blame. What's the root of it? Where is it coming from? Do the self-reflection. And you've got to do it regularly. And you've really got to try to adopt this new way of being, this new way of feeling, and whatever comes up for you when you go in and you do the reflection, you've got to adopt it, and you've got to put it on, each and every time before you then interact with the person again. You're kind of like setting the tone or setting the stage, right? Because now you are going to be responsible, and you're coming from this place of self-responsibility of your thoughts and your actions and your feelings and the energy that you're going to bring to a situation. I mean, in a nutshell, that's really what I'm hoping to impart to you today. I guess I kind of look at it like it's from my heart vibe to yours. And I hope you feel that. I hope you feel that. I hope it can sink in and really resonate with you. And let me know what questions you have. Let me know your comments. Let me hear from you. I would love to hear from you. If you've got some topics you want me to explore, I'm all ears, okay? We are in this together, and we're trying to change the way divorce is done together. And it takes an army to do it, right? It takes a tribe. And that's what I'm hoping to foster here. So to visit the Facebook page, Divorce with Heart Facebook page. Message me. If you've got a story to share and you want to be a guest, let me know. That'd be great. That'd be great. I think the more stories we can spotlight, the more we can get the word out there, the more people will actually realize that this stuff really is possible. So join me next week, Monday, same time. Call in, give me some calls. Let me help you out. I can look into your situation and the person you're dealing with, what's going on. Let me see where you're stuck, if I could offer some advice. We're going to talk about forgiveness next week. Thank you so much for joining me today. Come back next week and be sure to visit my website at dpremalaw.com to book a call, or let's connect on Facebook at dpremalaw, where you can join my group for more support. Please remember that the information shared is for general and entertainment purposes only, and that by calling in or messaging me, we are not creating an attorney-client relationship, and my advice is not intended to be legal advice. For specific legal advice, please contact a lawyer in your jurisdiction.
This show is brought to you by InflowRadio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.